I'm standing in a courtroom, watching my sister get sentenced to life in prison for attempting to murder my 7-year-old daughter, Indigo. But what haunts me most isn't what she did. It's that my own child knew it was coming and tried to warn me in the only way she knew how. My name is Shay Morrison. I'm 34 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I understood what danger looked like. I'm a pediatric nurse. I've seen abuse cases, neglect, accidents that could have been prevented. I've held crying mothers who didn't notice the warning signs. I always promised myself I'd be different. I'd be the mom who paid attention, who kept her child safe. But when the real threat came, it wasn't from some stranger in a van or a bully at school. It was from the person I trusted most to help me protect her. The judge is reading the charges now. Attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, 23 counts of poisoning a minor. Each word feels like a physical blow. My sister Vera sits there in her orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. She's 29, 5 years younger than me, but she looks older now. Prison does that to people, ages them in ways that have nothing to do with time. Her lawyer argued for mental health considerations, said she'd been struggling with delusions, that she never meant real harm. But I saw her journal. I read every calculated entry about dosages and timing. This wasn't delusion. This was planning. Indigo sits next to me on the wooden bench, her small hand wrapped in mine. She's 7 years old, though after everything she's been through, there's something ancient in her eyes now. She used to be the kind of kid who'd dance in grocery store aisles and make up songs about clouds. These days, she asks me to check the locks 3 times before bed. She still writes in her diary every single day, but now she shows me the pages. "Just so you know, I'm okay, Mommy," she says, as if I need proof she's still breathing, still here, still mine. The prosecutor is showing evidence photos on the screen now, pictures of Indigo's diary, the pages where she wrote her warning in purple crayon. The jury had gasped when they first saw those words during the trial. "Mom, if I die, it's not an accident." My daughter, barely able to spell accident correctly, had tried to leave evidence. At 7 years old, she was building a case for her own potential murder. They're showing Vera's apartment now, the bottles of sleeping medication they found, the antifreeze hidden behind cleaning supplies, the adoption websites bookmarked on her laptop. My sister had been researching how long she'd have to wait after my death to file for custody. She'd been looking at houses in California, schools for Indigo, had even picked out a new name for her. Phoenix, she wanted to call my daughter. Like she'd be reborn from ashes, Vera had written in her journal, rising from the disaster of her previous life into something better. The detective who worked our case, Detective James Holbrook, testified yesterday about finding the network. 17 people across 5 states, all connected through encrypted messages, sharing advice on undetectable poisons, ideal dosages for children of different weights, how to establish themselves as caregivers before the parent's mysterious illness or death. They called themselves the deserving, people who believed they were entitled to the children they were trying to steal. Vera had been talking to them for 8 months before she moved in with us. 8 months of planning how to take my daughter. I remember the day I found that diary entry, November 15th, 2:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I'd checked my phone right before walking into Indigo's room, thinking I'd surprise her by being home early. Her diary was on her bed, open like she'd left it there on purpose. Maybe she had. Maybe some part of her knew I'd come home that day, knew she was running out of time. The purple crayon was still there beside it, worn down to a nub from how hard she'd pressed those words into the paper. The courtroom is silent now except for the judge's voice. "Vera Morrison, you have been found guilty on all counts." I watch my sister's face for any sign of remorse, any flicker of the person who used to braid my hair when we were kids, who'd call me crying after bad breakups, who I'd trusted with the most precious thing in my life. There's nothing there. Just cold calculation, even now. Indigo tugs on my sleeve. "Mommy, is it over?" she whispers. "Yes, baby," I tell her, pulling her closer. "It's over." But we both know that's not entirely true. The legal part is over. Vera will never touch her again. The network has been dismantled, but the real story, The one about learning to trust again, about sleeping through the night without nightmares, about believing that the people who say they love you actually mean it. That story is just beginning. As we stand to leave the courtroom, I catch Vera's eye one last time. She mouths something to me, and for a second, I think it might be, "I'm sorry." But then I read her lips more clearly. She should have been mine. I pick up Indigo, even though she's getting too big for me to carry, and walk out of that courtroom knowing that some betrayals cut so deep they change the shape of your soul. My daughter saved her own life with a purple crayon and the courage to write the truth. And me? I'm the mother who almost lost everything because I believed that family meant safety. I was wrong. Sometimes family is the monster under the bed, the shadow in the corner, the poison in the milk. Sometimes the call is coming from inside the house, from the guest room you offered with love, from the sister you'd have died to protect. But Indigo lived. She lived because she was brave enough to write what she couldn't say. And now I'm going to tell you exactly how it happened, from the beginning, so you'll know what to watch for. So you'll believe your children when they tell you something's wrong, even when, especially when, the danger comes wrapped in family photos and childhood memories and a sister's smile. Life wasn't perfect, but we were making it work. After my divorce 2 years ago, it was just me and Indigo in our small house in Portland. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a backyard just big enough for the butterfly garden we'd planted together last spring. Every morning, Indigo would run outside in her pajamas to check if any new butterflies had arrived. "They're visiting from fairyland," she'd announce, making up elaborate stories about each one. My daughter was the brightest part of every day. She had this way of turning ordinary moments into adventures. Grocery shopping became a quest to find the dragon's favorite cereal. Folding laundry turned into a fashion show for her stuffed animals. She filled notebook after notebook with stories written in her crooked handwriting, always about brave princesses who saved themselves. I should have paid more attention to that detail. Working as a pediatric nurse meant long shifts, sometimes overnight, but I'd structured my life around being there for the moments that mattered. Morning drop-offs at school, bedtime stories, Saturday pancakes shaped like butterflies, because everything in Indigo's world had to have wings. My mom helped when she could, driving up from Salem every other weekend. "You're doing amazing, Shay," she'd tell me, watching Indigo practice cartwheels in the living room. "That little girl knows she's loved." The divorce had been hard on Indigo initially. She'd asked for months when Daddy was coming home. Ryan hadn't been a bad father, just an absent one. His job with the State Department kept him overseas, and eventually we both admitted that we were better as co-parents than spouses. He video called Indigo every Sunday from whatever embassy he was stationed at. She'd show him her latest drawings, tell him about school, pretend she wasn't sad when the call ended. It was a Tuesday night in August when Vera called. I was giving Indigo a bath, and she was making bubble beards for her rubber ducks when my phone rang. "Shay, I'm in trouble." My sister's voice cracked through the speaker. "I lost my job and my landlord's evicting me." I have nowhere to go. Vera had always been the wild one in our family. While I studied nursing, she dropped out of college to become a photographer, then a bartender, then a yoga instructor. She bounced between careers like she bounced between boyfriends, always searching for something she could never quite name. Our parents had spent years bailing her out of various crises before Dad passed and Mom moved to a smaller place. "Come stay with us," I heard myself saying. Indigo looked up from her duck drama, bubble beard dripping. "Aunt Vera?" she asked, her eyes lighting up. She'd only met Vera a handful of times, but to a 7-year-old, any visitor was exciting. "Family helps family," I told Indigo as we cleared out the guest room that weekend. We moved boxes of Christmas decorations to the garage, dusted off the dresser, put fresh sheets on the bed. Indigo contributed her own welcome gift, a picture she'd drawn of our house with a rainbow over it and Aunt Vera's room, written in purple crayon. Vera arrived with 2 suitcases and 1,000 apologies. "It's temporary, I promise," she said, hugging me tight in the driveway. "Just until I get back on my feet." She looked tired, thinner than I remembered, but when she saw Indigo hiding shyly behind my legs, her whole face transformed. "Is this my beautiful niece? Look how big you've gotten." The first few weeks were actually wonderful. Better than wonderful, they were exactly what I didn't know we needed. Vera would pick Indigo up from school while I worked late shifts at the hospital. I'd come home to find them in the kitchen, covered in flour, baking cookies shaped like butterflies. "Aunt Vera knows how to make them fly, Mommy," Indigo exclaimed, showing me how they'd attached paper wings with frosting. They developed routines I couldn't have predicted. Vera taught Indigo to paint her nails, something I'd always been too impatient for. They'd sit at the kitchen table with bottles of polish spread between them, Vera carefully painting each of Indigo's tiny nails a different color. "Rainbow fingers," Indigo would declare, waving her hands in the air to dry them. "You're so lucky, Shay," Vera said one night after Indigo went to bed. We were sharing a bottle of wine, something we hadn't done since we were younger. "She's perfect. Smart, creative, kind. Sometimes I watch her sleep and think about what it would be like to have a daughter like her." "You'll have your own kids someday," I said, refilling her glass. "Maybe," she replied, but her eyes stayed fixed on the hallway leading to Indigo's room. "Or maybe some people are meant to be mothers and others aren't." Looking back, I should have heard the warning in those words. Should have noticed how she said, "have a daughter like her," instead of, "have a daughter of my own." But I was just grateful for the help, for the sisterhood, for the way Indigo laughed more with Vera around. I was too busy being relieved to be suspicious. Things started changing in October. At first, the shifts were so subtle, I convinced myself I was imagining them. Indigo became quieter, spending more time in her room with the door closed. When I'd knock and ask what she was doing, she'd quickly shove something under her pillow. "Just playing, Mommy," she'd say. But her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. The child who used to perform daily concerts in our living room now barely spoke at dinner. "How was school today, baby?" I'd ask. "Fine," she'd mumble, pushing her food around her plate. Vera would jump in, overly cheerful. "She had a great day." We worked on her science project about butterflies. "Didn't we have fun, Indigo?" My daughter would nod without looking up. Then came the nightmares. The first one happened on October 12th. I woke at 2 a.m. to Indigo's screams, echoing down the hallway. I found her sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face, her butterfly sheets soaked with sweat. "The shadow lady wants to take me away," she sobbed into my shoulder. "She comes when everyone's sleeping. She says she's going to be my new mommy." "It's just a bad dream, sweetheart," I whispered, rocking her back and forth. But she wouldn't let go of my neck, her small fingers digging into my skin like she was afraid I'd disappear if she loosened her grip. Vera appeared in the doorway, looking concerned. "Poor thing," she said. "Maybe she needs to see a therapist." Kids can develop anxiety disorders young. My friend's daughter started having panic attacks at 8. The suggestion made sense. The divorce, my long work hours starting second grade. There were plenty of reasons Indigo might be struggling. Vera even found a child psychiatrist doctor, Melissa Grant, and offered to take Indigo to appointments while I worked. "You don't need to miss shifts," she insisted. "I'm here to help." But then I noticed changes in Indigo's daily habits. Her diary, which she'd always kept under her mattress, moved to behind her bookshelf, then inside an old shoebox in her closet. When I asked why she kept moving it, she looked at her bedroom door nervously. "I just want it to be really private," she said. One morning, I caught her sneaking juice boxes into her backpack. "What's this about, baby?" I asked, pulling out 3 apple juice boxes from our fridge. "I get thirsty at school," she mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "But we pack your water bottle every day." "I know, but sometimes I want juice instead." She started crying suddenly, violently, like I'd accused her of something terrible. "Please don't be mad, Mommy. I just want my own juice. The juice at home tastes funny now. The milk, too. Everything tastes wrong." I tested her temperature, thinking she might be getting sick. Normal. "Maybe you're coming down with something," I said. "Let's keep an eye on it." Vera was extra attentive that week, making Indigo's favorite meals, buying her new coloring books, braiding her hair in elaborate styles for school. "I'm just trying to help," she said when I mentioned Indigo, seemed overwhelmed by the attention. "Poor kids, clearly going through something." The call from Miss Rodriguez, Indigo's teacher, came on November 3rd. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm concerned about Indigo. She's fallen asleep at her desk 3 times this week. Yesterday, she could barely keep her eyes open during reading time, and she loves reading time. Is everything okay at home? She's been having nightmares, I explained. We're working on it. It's more than just being tired, Ms. Rodriguez continued. She seems foggy, almost drugged. Has she started any new medications? That night, I confronted Vera. We were cleaning up after dinner, Indigo already in bed at 7 p.m., exhausted again. Have you noticed anything odd about Indigo lately? Her teacher says she's been really drowsy. Vera dried a plate slowly, methodically. Kids go through phases. Maybe she needs vitamins. I can pick some up tomorrow. There's a children's multivitamin that's supposed to help with energy. The therapist hasn't mentioned anything? I pressed. Dr. Grant thinks she's processing the divorce still. Very normal, apparently. These things take time. I wanted to call Dr. Grant myself, but Vera had handled all the appointments, and with HIPAA laws, I'd need to fill out paperwork first. I'll call tomorrow, I decided. Don't you trust me? Vera's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. I'm doing everything I can to help you and Indigo. I take her to appointments, pick her up from school, make her meals when you're working, and now you're questioning me? That's not what I'm doing, I backtracked, feeling guilty. She was right. She'd been nothing but helpful. I'm just worried. We're all worried, Vera said, her tone softening. But Indigo's going to be fine. I'll make sure of it. The way she said, I'll make sure of it, should have terrified me. Instead, exhausted from a 12-hour shift and feeling guilty about questioning my sister's help, I just nodded and went to check on my sleeping daughter. On November 15th, I came home early from a canceled shift. A water main had burst at the hospital, flooding the pediatric ward, and they'd sent all non-emergency staff home. It was 2:47 p.m. when I pulled into our driveway, thinking I'd surprise Indigo by picking her up from school myself for once. The house was quiet when I walked in. Vera's car was gone, which was odd since she always stayed home on Wednesdays. I set my bag down and headed to the kitchen to make coffee, but something pulled me toward Indigo's room instead. Maybe it was Mother's intuition, or maybe it was just the unsettling silence of a house that should have felt more lived in. Indigo's diary was on her bed, open to a page dated 3 days earlier. She never left it out like this. The purple crayon she used to write was beside it, worn down to barely 2 inches. I sat on her butterfly comforter and started reading. Dear Diary, Aunt Vera keeps giving me special milk that makes me sleepy. I don't like it. She says if I tell Mommy, something bad will happen to Mommy at work. She said the hospital could burn down with Mommy inside. I'm scared. I pretend to drink it sometimes and pour it in the plant when she's not looking, but the plant died. My hands started shaking. I flipped back through the pages, reading entries I'd never seen before. 2 weeks earlier. Aunt Vera got mad when I wouldn't drink all my milk. She said I'm ungrateful. She said she deserves a good daughter more than Mommy does. She said Mommy doesn't even notice how tired I am. She's right. Mommy doesn't notice. That hit me like a physical blow. I kept reading, going back further. October 28th. I told Aunt Vera I want to stop going to doctor. Grant, she said doctor. Grant isn't real. We just go get ice cream and she tells me stories about when I live with her. She says it will be soon. October 20th. Aunt Vera showed me pictures of a house in California. She said that's where we're going to live, just us. I said, what about Mommy? And she said Mommy is going to heaven to be with the angels. I don't want Mommy to be with angels. I want her here. Then I found it. The entry that stopped my heart. Written in purple crayon, the letters pressed so hard they'd torn through the paper in places. Mom, if I die, it's not an accident. Aunt Vera put something in my drinks. I'm scared. I love you. Please don't be sad. Take care of my butterflies. I ran to Indigo's bathroom and threw up. Then I ran back to her room, grabbed every cup, every water bottle I could find. The milk glass from this morning was still on her nightstand, a white film coating the bottom. I smelled it. Nothing obvious, but there was something slightly off, almost bitter beneath the milk smell. My nursing training kicked in. I called poison control first, reading them the symptoms: drowsiness, confusion, nightmares, decreased appetite. Get her to an emergency room immediately, they said. Bring any substances you think she might have ingested. I called the school next. I need Indigo Morrison brought to the office right now. It's a medical emergency. Mrs. Morrison, your sister picked her up an hour ago. She said you'd called about the water main break and asked her to get Indigo early. The room spun. I hadn't called anyone. Did she say where they were going? No, but Indigo seemed upset. She kept saying she wanted to wait for you, but Miss Morrison insisted you'd asked her to come. I called Vera's phone, straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I grabbed Indigo's diary and the milk glass, threw them in a bag with every medication in our medicine cabinet, and called 911 as I ran to my car. My daughter's been kidnapped by my sister who's been poisoning her, I said, knowing how insane it sounded. I have evidence. She's 7 years old, brown hair, wearing her school uniform. They left Pioneer Elementary an hour ago in a blue Honda Civic. The dispatcher kept me on the line while she issued an Amber Alert. Can you think of where your sister might take her? I thought about the diary entry. California. She's been talking to my daughter about California. Within minutes, every cop in Portland was looking for Vera's car. I drove to the hospital, the diary beside me, reading more entries at red lights. Each one was worse than the last. My baby had been documenting her own attempted murder for weeks, leaving evidence because she knew I wasn't paying attention. By the time I reached the hospital, they'd found Vera's car at a rest stop off I-5, heading south, exactly like I'd predicted. Indigo was unconscious in the back seat. Vera claimed she was taking her to a hospital, that Indigo had suddenly gotten sick, but the bottle of antifreeze in her trunk told a different story. The ambulance brought Indigo to the hospital where I worked, where my colleagues became the team fighting to save my daughter's life. Dr. Patricia Chen, who'd eaten lunch with me 100 times, now stood over Indigo's unconscious body reading toxicology reports with tears in her eyes. Zolpidem, chronic exposure, she said, showing me the results. Someone's been giving her sleeping medication for at least 6 weeks. The levels are dangerously high, Shay. Her liver's been working overtime to process this. But that wasn't the worst part. The comprehensive metabolic panel revealed something that made everyone in the room go silent. Ethylene glycol, antifreeze, small amounts but consistent, building up in her system like a time bomb. She was escalating the doses, Dr. Chen explained. The sleeping medication was to keep Indigo compliant, confused. The antifreeze was the endgame. A few more weeks and it would have looked like sudden kidney failure. Without your daughter's diary, we'd never have known to look for poisoning. Indigo stayed in a coma for 2 days. I never left her side, holding her small hand, reading her favorite butterfly books out loud, promising her I'd never let anyone hurt her again. The police brought me updates while I sat in that hospital room. Each revelation was worse than the last. Detective James Holbrook was a tall man with kind eyes who'd seen too much. We found your sister at a motel in Grants Pass, he told me. She had plane tickets to San Diego for tomorrow, 1 adult, 1 child under fake names. How long had she been planning this? We're still piecing it together, but Shay, this is bigger than just your sister. He pulled out his tablet, showing me Vera's laptop screen. She was part of an online network. They call themselves the Deserving. It's a group of people who believe they're entitled to children they think are being raised wrong. The forum posts made me physically ill. Vera had been active for 8 months under the username ButterflyMom2B. She'd posted pictures of Indigo without her face showing, asking for advice on dosages for a 7-year-old, approximately 45 pounds. The responses were horrifyingly detailed. Someone called Doctor. M had become her mentor, walking her through exactly how much Zolpidem to use, how to mask the taste, how to gradually introduce antifreeze without causing immediate symptoms. This Dr. M, Detective Holbrook continued, we believe he's actually a pharmacist in Nevada. He's been advising at least 12 people on similar plans. Your daughter's diary is the break we needed. It's direct evidence of an attempted murder conspiracy. They showed me more evidence from Vera's motel room. Adoption papers she'd been filling out, claiming to be Indigo's sole guardian after my unexpected death. She'd researched grief counselors in San Diego who specialized in children who'd lost parents. She'd enrolled Indigo in a school there under the name Phoenix Morrison, with a start date of January. But the most chilling discovery was Vera's journal. Detective Holbrook warned me before showing it to me, but I needed to see it. page after page of delusions and calculations, plans and fantasies. "Shay doesn't deserve her," one entry read. "She leaves that perfect child with anyone who will watch her while she works. She doesn't see what a gift Indigo is. I've wanted to be a mother my whole life, and God kept saying no. But now I understand. He wasn't saying no, he was saying wait for Indigo. She was always meant to be mine." Another entry dated just 3 days ago. "Indigo knows something's wrong. She's too smart. Found her diary today while she was at school. She's been documenting everything. I need to accelerate the timeline. Can't risk Shay finding it first. Dr. M says increase the antifreeze to 15 milliliters per dose. Says it'll look like sudden organ failure. Tragic but not suspicious. Indigo will be so grief-stricken she'll need me. She'll forget all about the milk and the sleepy feelings. Children are resilient. She'll learn to call me Mom soon enough." On the 3rd day, Indigo's eyes fluttered open. "Mommy?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Is it really you?" "It's me, baby. You're safe. Aunt Vera's gone. She said she was taking me to our new house," Indigo said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "She said you were already there waiting for us." But I knew she was lying. You'd never leave without saying goodbye. You always say goodbye, even when you just go to work. The truth of that simple statement broke me. My 7-year-old daughter had clung to the routine of our goodbyes as proof I was still alive. She'd been fighting a psychological battle with a grown woman who'd been drugging her, and she'd won by remembering that her mother always said goodbye. "I read your diary," I told her. "You saved yourself, baby. You saved us both." "I knew you'd find it," she said. "I left it on my bed on purpose." "The teacher said we were going home early, and I knew you'd come to my room. You always check on me when you come home. Even poisoned, even terrified, my daughter had known me better than I'd known myself. The trial made national headlines. 7-year-old's diary exposes child poisoning ring. Every major news outlet covered it. Nancy Grace called it the most disturbing case of family betrayal in decades. But for us, it wasn't a headline. It was our life, torn apart and slowly being stitched back together. Vera was sentenced to life without parole. The judge called her actions a calculated betrayal of the most sacred trust. She never showed remorse. Even at sentencing, she maintained that she would have been a better mother to Indigo. "I loved her more than you ever could," she told me during our one prison visit. "You got everything, the husband, the child, the perfect life. I just wanted my turn." "She was never yours to take," I replied. "Wasn't she? You barely noticed what was happening. If it wasn't for that stupid diary, she'd be happy with me now. She'd be Phoenix, living by the ocean, forgetting all about her neglectful mother who cared more about work than watching for danger." I stood up to leave but turned back one last time. That stupid diary is proof that my daughter is smarter and braver than you'll ever be. And I may have missed the signs, but she didn't. She saved herself. The investigation exploded after Vera's arrest. That Dr. M. Detective Holbrook mentioned, he was actually Marcus Hoffman, a pharmacist from Reno who'd lost his license 5 years ago for stealing medications. The FBI found 17 people across 5 states who'd been following his poisoning protocols. 3 children had already died from mysterious illnesses that were now being reinvestigated as homicides. One mother in Ohio called me after seeing the news. Her sister had been caring for her 4-year-old son when he died of sudden kidney failure last year. "I knew something was wrong," she sobbed over the phone. "He kept saying Aunt Lisa's juice tasted bad. I told him not to be rude. I made him drink it." Indigo's diary became evidence in 12 different cases. Her brave words in purple crayon helped convict people in states she'd never visited, saved children she'd never meet. The FBI created new protocols for investigating sudden childhood illnesses when family caregivers are involved. They call it Indigo's Law unofficially, though my daughter doesn't know that. She doesn't need that weight on her small shoulders. Recovery hasn't been linear. Indigo spent 6 months in therapy, learning to process what happened. She had to relearn that food could be safe, that sleep wasn't dangerous, that people who said they loved her might actually mean it. For months, she'd only eat food she watched me prepare. She'd seal her water bottle with stickers to make sure no one had opened it while she was gone. We moved to a new house across town, somewhere Vera had never been. Indigo picked her new room, the one with the biggest window for watching butterflies. We planted a new butterfly garden together, bigger than before. "These butterflies only know us," she told me seriously. "They never met Aunt Vera, so they're safer." The child therapist, a real one this time named Dr. Jennifer Walsh, told me Indigo showed remarkable resilience. She knew something was wrong and found a way to leave evidence. That takes incredible courage and intelligence for a 7-year-old. Many adults wouldn't have thought to document what was happening. "Why didn't she just tell me directly?" I asked, hating myself for needing to ask. "Vera threatened you. In Indigo's mind, staying quiet was protecting you. The diary was her compromise. A way to tell the truth without speaking it out loud." Now, a year later, we've found our new normal. Indigo still writes in her diary every day, but the entries are different. "Today was good," she'll read to me at bedtime. "Nobody tried to hurt me, and Mom made pancakes with chocolate chips." She shows me the happy entries, keeps the sad ones private. I respect that boundary while making sure she knows she can tell me anything. She asked me recently why Aunt Vera wanted to hurt her. I'd practiced my answer with Dr. Walsh, but in the moment, I could only tell her the truth. "Some people are sick in ways we can't see, baby." Aunt Vera convinced herself that taking you was right, even though it was very wrong. But you listened to your instincts. You knew something was wrong, and you told someone the only way you felt safe. That makes you the bravest person I know. "Braver than butterflies?" she asked. "Much braver. Butterflies just follow the wind. You fought against a storm. If you're watching this, if you've made it through our whole story, please remember this. Trust your instincts about your children. When their behavior changes, when they become quiet or scared, don't dismiss it. The danger might be closer than you think, wearing a familiar face, sitting at your dinner table, tucking your child into bed. Family doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes the people who share our blood are the ones most capable of spilling it. But survival? Survival means listening to the small voices, the quiet warnings, the purple crayon messages that save lives. If this story resonated with you, please share it. Someone in your life might need to hear it. Comment below if you've noticed warning signs you initially dismissed. Your story could help another parent. And subscribe to this channel where we share real stories that matter, stories that might just save a life. Because sometimes a 7-year-old with a diary knows more about danger than all the adults in the room. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the biggest truth. And sometimes paying attention to those purple crayon words makes all the difference between a tragedy and a triumph. Indigo is 9 now. She still loves butterflies, still writes stories about brave princesses. But now, her princesses don't wait for rescue. They document the dragon's weaknesses, gather evidence, and save themselves, just like she did.